These are 5 money mistakes to avoid in your 20s. So, in your 20s, not to comment on the state of the education system when it comes to personal finances, but I'm going to go there. Basically, you come out of college and our education system is terrible when it comes to understanding anything revolving your money, investing, how to pay taxes, all that stuff. You don't really learn in high school, college, or really anywhere. I'd say it's getting better, but realistically, the education system is sort of lacking. So when you come into your 20s, a lot of times people develop really bad habits. And so I'm going to tell you about the 5 biggest ones that I see kind of amongst most 20-year-olds and kind of how to prevent them. So one of the biggest things I see for 20-year-olds and mistake that you should often really, really, really focus to try to avoid is debt. So debt is one of the biggest things that can crush your finances in your 20s. You really want to make sure you try to avoid this. People come out of college with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of student loan debt. And when you come out of college with that much debt, you get a job. Well, a lot of your income then goes to pay back that debt. And well, what happens if you want to have a life and go out to eat, have a lifestyle, etc.? Well, a lot of people turn to credit cards to help subsidize their livelihood. Well, then they have a credit card debt that also has a monthly payment requirement. So now you have student loan debt plus credit card debt, and the problem just kind of continues on and on and on. So until you have more debt than you can basically control. And then that can cost you well into your 30s, 40s, because it can sometimes take decades to pay off that debt. So avoiding debt in college and beyond is super important. And there's really 2 fixes to preventing debt. 1, live within your means, so aka spend less. Or 2, if that's not acceptable for you and you want to live the lifestyle you want to live, that's perfectly fine. But go make more money. That's why there's side hustles. I don't say this is like tough love or anything like that, but it's just one of those things that those are your 2 options: spend less, make more. So otherwise you're going into debt, and it's going to be one of those things that's impossible to get out of, or not impossible, but very hard to get out of. So, if you want to maintain a lifestyle or increase your lifestyle and spend more, then just find a passion, find a hobby that you can make money off of, or even go drive Uber or Uber Eats. There's all sorts of different jobs that you can go as like a side hustle these days. So make sure you're just making more money. Develop a side hustle, or just live within your means. And that's a way to prevent one mistake, which is staying out of debt. Another mistake that a lot of 20-year-olds make is not investing early and investing often. So investing early is super important, just because one of the easiest way to make money and one of the important factors of investing is time. You got plenty of that in your 20s. You don't have much of that when you're in your 50s. So it's one of those things, you want to start investing early, you want to start investing often. It doesn't necessarily have to be, super tons amount of, was that even English? It doesn't have to be a ton of money when you're starting off early, but you want to make sure that you're investing at least whatever you can. And I usually recommend, say, 10% or more of your income going to investments. And I would say get it on autopilot. So don't even think about it, whether it's your 401k through your company, whether that's using a software like, if you're investing in crypto, it could be like Swan Bitcoin or Coinbase, allow for daily, if not weekly savings. Companies like Acorn allow you to save just by, every time you swipe your credit card, you can add a couple of dollars into investments. Same with, you can do automated weekly investments and things like that. So it's a way to sort of save on autopilot and get that money invested. So get that money invested, forget about it, forget you have that money even going anywhere. And then your lifestyle is not impacted because that money's already forgotten about, and it's building for your future. Another mistake I see a lot of 20-year-olds make is not budgeting. I'm not a huge advocate of budgeting for budgeting's sake. I think it's kind of like dieting, where if you diet and restrict your calories, well, you start to get overwhelmed, you start to get anxious, and then you end up eating more than you had been before. I see sort of the same thing with budgeting, where if you start trying to restrict yourself from spending the things you love, well, then you ultimately go overzealous and go on shopping sprees and things like that. So I think budgeting is, I think it's important, and if you can do it, I think great. But more than budgeting, I think the mistake that a lot of 20-year-olds make is just not being cognizant or understanding where their money is going. I meet with a lot of clients and things that, we'll do cash flow planning, and we'll look at, I'll ask them how much they think they're spending. They think they're spending $5,000 when in actuality they're spending close to 11. And again, that's kind of how it goes back to that other problem of increasing debt is if you don't know how much you're spending, it's hard to prevent things like debt. It's hard to manage your money. It's hard to build wealth. So really at least knowing where your money is going is super important. You don't necessarily have to restrict like, hey, I can only spend $300 on eating out. And then, well, if you go to one restaurant that's going to take you to 305 and now you hate yourself for it, that's not worth doing. Like life shouldn't be that way. But understanding that, hey, I spent $305 on eating out this month, maybe I eat out one time less next month, that's more what I mean, is just understanding where your money is going and make sure it's going to the things that you value in your life, and not spending $3,000 aimlessly on coffee each month. If you can cut that in by a fraction and spend $100 on coffee, which is still an insane amount from home. But you see where I'm going with this, is just really understanding where your money is and where it's going, more so than just budgeting per se, is the biggest thing you can do when you're in your 20s towards just making sure you prevent a lot of other mistakes. So a mistake I see 20-year-olds doing is not factoring in budget or factoring in where their money is going. Another mistake I see, which kind of goes along the lines of budgeting and knowing where your money is going, but lifestyle creep. So one of the beautiful things about being in your 20s is if you work hard, you can get promoted really fast and you can increase your wages really fast because you're getting experience, you're gaining life skills, career skills, you're moving up the chain quickly, you're becoming a more valued asset of your company, and aka you're making more money. So when you're making more money, what tends to happen for a lot of individuals is they also increase their expenses and they increase their lifestyle. Instead of buying, say, a ramen, they're buying, Whole Foods, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it also happens in every facet of their life. Instead of driving, say, a Honda Civic, you're now driving a Mercedes, which, again, if these are the choices that you want to make, that's totally fine as long as it's within your means and you're factoring in some of these other things like staying out of debt, at least like egregious debt, staying out of things like, or basically avoiding any other big mistakes like spending too much money, having too much debt, not investing, things like that. Spending's okay, but you just want to be, again, not let lifestyle creep just happen unknowingly, just because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. So making sure if your wage goes up, that either you're increasing your savings to, again, then subsidize that lifestyle in the future, or you're at least being cognizant of the money that you're spending as your wages are going up. Letting lifestyle creep just happen without any knowledge of it can be super damaging to your long-term potential and your long-term ability to build wealth. In an ideal world, if you can keep your lifestyle the exact same as your wages increase, that's the ideal, because then any excess that you have in terms of wealth accumulation can then go to things like investments, where now from instead of a 10% savings rate, you're at, say, a 50% savings rate. Well, imagine what you can do with 50% getting invested every single month. Well, that just gets you to financial freedom that much quicker, basically 5 times quicker. So that's a pretty powerful thing. So if you can sort of restrict yourself a little bit, I'm not saying, go be a Mormon or not Mormon, a Buddhist monk where you basically aren't spending any money whatsoever. I'm not saying go to that extreme, but what I am saying is basically just going to be spending within your means, within your sort of exact money that you were living off of, within reasonable realm there. But then, again, spending and saving all the excess, and investing all the excess. So, long-winded way of saying, make sure you don't let lifestyle creep happen. The last mistake I see a lot of people make in their 20s is basically not planning for the future. So all these things that I kind of mentioned before, all the other mistakes I see 20-year-olds make is along the lines of that, 20-year-olds tend to live in the present. There's a lot going on. You're young, you're healthy, you're happy, you're going out to parties, you're starting jobs, you're going on vacations, your trips, you're getting married, all these cool and exciting things, which is great. But don't do that at the expense of the future. And preventing some of these other 4 mistakes go a long way to make sure you're still taking care of your future self. So it's one of those things that's hard to think about your 50s, 60s, and 70s when you're in your 20s living the life. But those years are going to come, whether you're ready or not. And just making sure you don't end up in a bind, 50 years down the line is huge. And just making sure you are doing the steps today. You don't need to have, say, a precise game plan of how you're going to retire in your 20s. And I think that's valuable, but I think more than that is not forgetting about the future and setting up the, life habits, whether that's, good automated savings, minimizing debt, those sorts of things, setting up the good habits now so you don't forget about your future. Don't basically waste your future on the now. Again, enjoy the now, but don't do it at the sake of your future. Hopefully you found this video valuable. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe. But otherwise, we'll see you next time. Cheers.